Greetings, anime addicts and cartoon fanatics. Welcome to the annual Chol gushes about the anime he liked in one year that no one cares about. Just like last year, I narrowed it down to only 10, but this year I did things a little different. After watching an episode of a show, I'd rate it on my first thoughts. The scale would be 1 to 5, with 1 being bad and 5 being great. After the show ended, I'd take those numbers and get an average for the show overall. I based the order placement solely on that. So before we get started, here are the shows that just missed the mark. How heavy are the dumbbells you lift? I breathed a sigh of relief that this didn't make the list. The fan service-filled comedy show normally isn't my thing, but it was educational and funny enough that I was able to forgive it for its perverted focus. Kaguya-sama, Love is War. Wait, no, really? This didn't make the list? But it was so funny and well animated and the Chica dance, come on. Indro, a story that starts at the end of a D&D-like campaign that suddenly gets restarted where the main boss is now a cute dragon girl that has to teach the group that was the one that defeated her. Oh, and she's voiced by Misa Kikuno? Yes please. Sinew Girl, a girl does not speak, communicates with haiku. Hijinks doth ensue. Wasteful Days of a High School Girl. This was so close to being on the list, but it just got knocked out. If you're a fan of Nichijou, this is practically a spiritual successor. And wait, a girl that's into the macabre that isn't emotionless, condescending, or malicious, but shy, sweet, and kind? Double yes! And now for the top 10. Astra, Lost in Space. It's the year 2063, and 8 students, plus 1 child, are sent off to a planetary camp on a nearby planet called McPaw. However, when they arrive, a strange orb appears in which they are attacked and suddenly transported into space floating above the planet. After finding an abandoned spaceship nearby, the crew discover they are no longer above McPaw, but are actually several light years away. They all now must travel on this spaceship, which they have named Astra, from planet to planet gathering food and resources while trying to find their way back to their home planet. However, they must do this with the added element of a possibility that one of the 9 crew members may be a traitor among them. That was the initial cause of their predicament. Okay, in all honesty, if I was told this premise with no prior knowledge of the name of the manga this show is based on, I would not have been interested. Yeah, I'm one of those weird nerds that find science fiction uninteresting. This may be from overexposure, or maybe it just isn't my taste. But yeah, if I was presented that, I would never check the show out. The only reason I did was because in working my job, I would constantly see covers of the original manga, which all contained some character floating out in space and always a shot of someone's butt shown in these skin-tight spacesuits. Hashtag that Astra. So constantly seeing this, plus the fact that I heard people really like the manga, I felt the need to at least give it a try. And, well, there is a reason it's low on the list. It does overall feel like generic sci-fi. The title Lost in Space basically tells us what we should expect in each episode. New planet, strange creatures, perilous predicaments, and some pointless fan service. But even with all that, it still managed to make it to the number 10 spot. And the reason, at least at first, was that these characters were likable is also the mystery of what the orb was, who may be the traitor, and what they will discover as the story goes on, so it did keep me interested. And honestly, I can't tell you any more than that. The main reason is, the best part of Astra Lost in Space are the twists. Yeah, it turns out every one of these characters has a secret backstory that even they are unaware of. And all of them are connected. It was such a strange reveal that at first I thought it was some kind of red herring, but nope, yeah, it totally is true. As more and more episodes went on, more secrets were revealed. One being that one character is actually intersex. I was going to say this is the first example of this ever in an anime, but my friend sent me this, so yeah, apparently I'm behind on this topic. Then the end of episode 9 happened, giving us the biggest twist surprise ever, and leaving me saying this.
Quick question, what the heck is going on here?
Honestly, the twists and turns the story took, coupled with the fact that the characters were interesting and likable, is what helped the show get on the list. Its overall effect on me, though, wasn't all that impressive, and honestly the ending was built up to be this really big thing with a lot of tension, but just ended with a very quick resolve, and the rest of the last episode was just everyone's epilogue. But maybe that's just me. Honestly, I still say the show is enjoyable and engaging enough to try. Astra Lost in Space is available on Funimation and Hulu. Prepare for one interesting flight into the unknown. Demon Slayer. Oh man, it's been way too long since I've been into a true shonen anime. I've dabbled in the genre in my youth with things like Dragon Ball, Fullmetal Alchemist, and Naruto, but in recent years, I've mostly avoided the genre. This coming from mostly overexposure and some other elements I'll go over later. But here is the first time in years that not only have I liked a shonen anime, but I truly love it. And it's the first time that this has happened, and the vast majority of anime fans also are in love with it. Demon Slayer follows Tanjiro, a young boy living with his impoverished family on a remote mountain, enjoying a relatively content life. But after traveling to a nearby town selling goods, Tanjiro returns the next morning to find a horrid sight. His entire family has been slaughtered by a demon. The only survivor is his little sister Nezuko, but she isn't the same. Nezuko has been turned into a demon. Horrified, Tanjiro fights off Nezuko while trying to get through to her, and amazingly enough... But in that moment, Demon Slayer Gyuyu Tomioka appears. Confused to see Tanjiro try to protect the demon, Gyuyu has her standoff holding Nezuko hostage. Tanjiro begs for him to not kill her. Gyuyu yells at him to stop groveling and start acting, and then injures Nezuko. Tanjiro takes action, and though defeated, Tanjiro has a surprise in store. Afterwards, Nezuko breaks free and appears to lunge at Tanjiro's unconscious body. But to Gyuyu's surprise, it wasn't to attack, but to protect him. In seeing this, Gyuyu spares her and tells Tanjiro to find a man named Sankonji Urukodaki. After burying the family, Tanjiro and Nezuko journey to find Tokoji, learn of the demon who slayed their family, and go on to join the Demon Slayer Corps. Okay, so normally I try not to do recaps when doing these top 10 reviews, but I had to for this one just to explain why that first episode captured me so much. The first episode was so dark and shocking, full of heartfelt emotion. The other elements were Tanjiro's clever use of his hatchet, plus the fact that somehow Nezuko is fighting through her monstrous side. Everything about this captured me and I wanted to watch more. So with all that said, why is it this low on the list? Well, you saw how episode had things like this. By episode 3, we were seeing things like this. I'm sorry, I thought we were watching a dark story about demons. Why do we have slapstick in this? Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves I've always had with shonen these days. I was starting to worry about it at this point. But despite these moments within the show, I'll totally put up with them for the raw and twisted moments that come when fighting the demons. And when I say twisted, trust me on this, there are some very horrifying deaths in this. I won't show any of them here, but there are times that I had to cut my mouth in horror, and sometimes they came so fast I couldn't prepare myself for them. But the one thing that really brought the show down on the list, the one thing that I could not stand, was this little crap stain. This guy grated my nerves into fine powder. He is the most obnoxious, pathetic, mood-killing little moron I've seen in all of anime. Like seriously, my fellow anime fans, you put all your hate on Akko or Maru-chan when this guy exists? But, despite all that, even when those things could drag down an episode to a 2 out of 5 star rating for me, this show is still amazing. Full of fun and energetic characters as well as frightening and intimidating demons. Not to mention that some very incredible animation to boot. That one scene you may have seen getting praised on Twitter is just one example. Heck, the last episode of the season pulled out some of the most impressive visuals I've seen in a long time. Another element to praise is the relationship between Tanjiro and Nezuko. And it's not just because we finally have a loving brother-sister relationship in an anime that's not incestual, and I can't believe I have to point that out, but the fact that Nezuko, being a demon, now can use her new strength to help Tanjiro in battle. I honestly think they don't use her enough in the show, but when they do, it's always amazing. But the one thing that really sold me on the show was actually giving backstory to the demons Tanjiro faces. Some of these demons are the most villainous and horrible creatures you'll ever see, yet the backstories given can be some of the most moving and powerful. You'll actually feel sorry for them. I dare you to watch the end of this demon story and not cry your eyes out by the end of it. I may have Demon Slayer lower on the list and I may have done a lot of complaining, but trust me, this show deserves every bit of praise that's been receiving. Even when it tested my patience, it did grow on me. Even this little crap stain did. To a very, very small extent. Demon Slayer is available on Crunchyroll, Funimation, and Hulu. See why so many have gone crazy over this show.
Today with you.
Carol and Tuesday. Anyone who has even a passing interest in anime is aware of a select few shows and movies that are held in high regard, the titles that become gateways to the world of otaku culture. Cowboy Bebop is one example, and what many say made that show so influential was the fact that its story and structure are very accessible to the American mindset. Director Shinichiro Watanabe seems to be trying to repeat that success with Carol and Tuesday. And honestly, I think he may have succeeded. The story follows Tuesday Simmons, inspiring guitar player and daughter to a politician that I can only describe as being what Hillary would be like if she were Trump. Tuesday runs away from home to Alba City, where she encounters Carol, another inspiring musician and orphan refugee from Earth. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention this whole story takes place on Mars? The story is set 50 years into the migration to the now terraformed Mars. In this technologically advanced society, most things are done using artificial intelligence. One of those things is music. Computers are used to write and create music, and rarely is a song produced by humans. That is what makes Carol and Tuesday unique. Both too poor to afford such pleasantries, these two ladies write and create music on their own. And one spontaneous performance caught on camera gets the attention of a washed-up manager named Gus Goldman, who was shown the video by his programmer buddy Rhodey. Rhodey. Really? Okay. These four work together to get their music heard, but with many obstacles in the way. One comes in the form of a rival, Angela Carpenter, a former child actress and famous model who recently has decided to take on a music career with record-numbered contemporary hit producer Tao. There are a number of things that make the show very accessible to the American audience, from the obvious Western look and feel of the setting, even referencing known American concerts and events. One of the most interesting choices is every song written for the show is in English. Separate singers and voice actors were used, and at times it works, though sometimes it's painfully obvious the voices don't match.
どんなミュージシャンだってこんな音を出したい
Another element that would be relatable to Americans is the, refugee migration element. Yeah, remember how I said Tuesday's mother was a Hillary Trump hybrid? I say this because one of her key campaigns is talking about the threat of migrants to Mars from Earth. Rings a lot of bells, doesn't it? This plot has some small connections to the overall story, though it almost seems pointless to have this. And I can't help but find it insane that the people of Mars could ever have a problem with migrants from Earth. I mean, you all were from Earth. Carol and Tuesday makes this list only partly from the story, though. It's not to say that it's bad, in fact it's quite good with character and some emotional drama. The things that really put this on the list are the songs. Oh my god, the songs! Any music lovers out there watching this review should put this show into your must-watch list. It's a funny idea for a show about the difference between music created for algorithms and songs created from inspiration and creativity of an artist being created by producers with the goal to sound authentic and real. But somehow composer Maki knocked it out of the park. Carol and Tuesday's first song, The Loneliest Girl, is one we get to hear 3 versions of. The first creation, the first public performance, and then the full version they play at a talent show. And you can hear the progression into it becoming a full song, and it's possibly the best in the series. And that's not to knock the rest of the songs. Every song works and builds the soundtrack to be one of the best in recent years. Well, all but one. Yep. I say if you like previous works from Watanabe, then this show is worth checking out. Carol and Tuesday is available on Netflix. Check it out and see if you can feel the teardrops of the loneliest girl. Fruits Basket first season. What's this? A remake on the list? Seems blasphemous, maybe? I have been vocal at times about remakes and how pointless and overall lazy it is to make them. Not lazy in animation, of course, just in story writing and creating new ideas. There have been other remakes recently. Kino's Journey and Dororo are 2 examples that come to mind, the latter being the only one I watched a good bit of. When the remake of Fruits Basket came around, I was expecting to not get into it. I say this because, confession time here, I didn't really get past episode 1 of the original. Yeah, I know. Me and my friends on Discord watched that episode not too much earlier in the year, and I came out of that episode with very little interest. I can't explain exactly why. I guess the whole plot of a family with a curse of turning into zodiac animals after being hugged by the opposite sex was just not that interesting, or something wasn't all that funny about the jokes, or who knows what it really was that I didn't like about the first episode. But with the first episode of the remake, it drew me in more. Maybe it's because the animation was so good. Maybe it was the fact that we very quickly saw a backstory of the main girl, Toru's, saw her connection to the cat in the old Zodiac folktale. Maybe it was the mean girl group going after Toru was animated to be funnier and was giving me a good chuckle. But more than likely, what hooked me in like a bass was these two.
くだんねえ因縁つけてんじゃねえぞこら。なんです。ヤンキーはすぐ脅せば済むと思って。毒電波でにしてやる。
Am I just forgetful, or were these two not in the original's first episode? Because I'm sure I would have remembered these two. This is Arisa Utani and Saki Hanajima, a former bike gang leader and an emo kid who can read people's spiritual vibes. Both best friends and practically bodyguards to Toru. That fact alone and this very small scene with them was honestly the most fascinating thing to me. I wanted to watch the entire thing just for this. And it's not to say that the rest of the episode was boring. In fact, some of the things that happened that I do remember also being in the original first episode played out in a more striking way, whether it be in an emotional level or just being funnier. For those that don't know the original story, Toru discovers the secrets of the Soma clan. Like stated before, members have a curse that prevents them from hugs from the opposite sex. If this does occur, for a brief time they turn into the animals of their corresponding zodiac, or at least close equivalents. Seriously, how is a seahorse a dragon? Through sitcom-like circumstances, Toru now lives with 3 members of this clan. Kyo, the ill-tempered cat, Yuki, the gentle and strong rat, and Shigure, the horn dog. Now, certain other reviewers have talked about the show and how it's pretty generic shoujo with love triangles and unneeded fantasy elements that seem to not have any significant connections to the overall narrative, and to a degree I can see where they're coming from. The whole turning into animals bit almost never comes up as a dire situation of trying to hide it from anyone, and though I do like the romantic elements in Fruits Basket, I'm also not too terribly interested in the outcome of that, or do I have any desire to ship any characters. I can't explain why, I just don't. But there is good reason despite all of that for this making it to this spot on the list, and that is the drama element of the show. I'm not going to sit here and say that every episode was perfect with this. I mean, there is an episode where Toru talks down somebody off a ledge. Honestly, it's one of the most moving speeches about not giving up, and it moved me greatly, and I think many people need to hear it. But earlier in that same episode, they had jokes like this.
お父様お母様先立つ不幸をお許しください。
Yeah, having the butt of the jokes for a while being about suicidal thoughts, and then having one of those times suddenly being serious was kind of confusing. Also, a friend pointed out that suicide as a joke has been done way too often in media, and I can't help but agree. So what I'm really saying is not every episode hits the nail on the head when dealing with deep topics on drama. But when the episodes do, they don't just hit the nail. They leave a deep hole in your heart that can take days to heal. You know how I said Arisa and Saki are fun characters that strangely are good friends with Toru? Well, after a long time, we finally get backstories on how they became friends with her. Episodes 16 and 17 show Arisa's short time in a gang before meeting Toru and learning her mother was a former biker gang leader. This story is a really strong one for sure. But guys, if you decide to watch episode 22 and see Saki's backstory, be prepared to get your heart crushed in the worst way. Saki's story is about her unique ability to hear other people's thoughts and read their wavelengths, something she struggled with as a child and got bullied for. And if you have ever had to deal with bullies before, you will get triggered by this episode. This freaking image right here should spell out how bad it gets. Both Saki and Arisa's story have them at their lowest, and the person that brought them out of it all was Toru. And Toru is the main thing that puts this anime so high up. I've talked about another anime, Kimi to Doke, as being my favorite anime of all time. One of the key elements was Sawako. She was this adorable girl who seemed to be nothing short of a goddess in purity, compassion, and sympathy. A character that has almost no distinguishable flaws, always caring about others and almost never thinking selfishly about herself. Toru is not only the same in every regard. If you put a gun to my head and had me choose which one is the best in any of those regards, I could not pick one. With Fruits Basket, however, we see many examples of Toru's personality and goodwill rubbing off on everyone else, influencing them to be better people. And being this is a romance type of show, you can easily see why anyone would fall in love with Toru. And before anyone comes to me about how perfect characters are boring and predictable, you can just get out of my channel right now, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life! Fruits Basket couldn't make it into the top 5, but had small, wonderful bits in it to help it make it to the list this high up. Fruits Basket's first season is available on Crunchyroll, Funimation, and Hulu. Watch it to find that pickled plum on this soju rice ball. And maybe you'll discover you have one in your back as well. 'Cause we're one step closer. It's a line from the show. Just go with it. My roommate is a cat. Well, what do you know? Another anime about a single awkward and shy male living alone and almost never going outside. Jeez, wonder why this is so high on the list. Yeah, I hear you all out there, now shut it. My Roommate is a Cat is about a 23-year-old mystery novel writer, Subaru Mikazuki. Like I stated before, he spends most of his time indoors working on his next story and doesn't like spending time in the public or around other people. Subaru's issue with being in public stems from two things really. The general noise from passersby bothers him, and the fact that he hates spoilers. However, this living alone part is sadly more recent. Subaru is in need of a new story idea, mostly to get his editor to stop bothering him. And while visiting his parents' grave with food, a small cat appears. For whatever reason, Subaru is struck with inspiration. He then takes the cat home with him, mostly to study this cat and use it to come up with his story ideas. The cat is an inspiration mostly because it acts so mysteriously, like dragging food to him when it doesn't eat. One time it even drags its bowl to the door of his room. While staying there confused, Subaru suddenly faints due to forgetting to eat while working on his novel. Later he wakes up to this editor by his side, cat food in his mouth, and little notes strewn around him. A confusing mystery as to what happened, which is pretty much why this little cat is so interesting to Subaru. What secrets does this new roommate have for Subaru? Makes you wonder what the cat is thinking. My Roommate is a Cat. Gee, what do you know? A cute show about an adorable cat. I wonder why this is so high on your list. Yeah, I hear you out there. Our story follows that of a lonely black and white cat who is eventually given the name Haru. Haru is a stray who wanders the streets alone. However, sadly, that is only a recent thing for Haru.
どうして目を開けないの?
One day in search of food, Haru stumbles upon this strange human in the field of Stone Monument. Confused that this human was placing perfectly good food out and not eating it, Haru decides to allow this guy to take her home with him and keep an eye on him, hoping to repay the favor for the food earlier. However, this guy just steps on the food and throws it away. What a weirdo. In one last attempt to get the dumb human to eat, Haru pushes the food bowl to his door, but before the human can do anything, he passes out. Haru is concerned about this because Haru knows what happens to those who don't eat. Thankfully, in this human stupor, he does grab the cat food and eat. Then, randomly sits up and jots down the rest of his notes for his story before going to sleep. Haru sees he is just sleeping and thankfully still warm. Haru finds this human so strange, but can see that it can't seem to take care of itself. So Haru vows to stay with the human and take care of him. And that's pretty much the format of this show. Each episode starts with the perspective of Subaru and his interactions with Haru. Then the episode starts over and shows Haru's perspective. It's a pretty fun setup in leaving the audience guessing why Haru does what she does, then reveals the intentions as well as give a different viewpoint on things that happen to Subaru. I can't really explain it, but at times the show got emotional for me in really small ways. At first, Subaru was only keeping the cat for studying and hadn't even thought of a name for it, nor for the one in this story. After an encounter with a cute sales lady at the pet store, which by the way is one of the most cutest moments of misunderstandings ever, Subaru is trying to think of a name. Every choice he made does nothing, but after thinking back to a storybook that his mom read him, the name Haru comes up, to which the cat responds. Looking at Subaru's face in those moments, you can tell he is becoming moved that he's made a connection. It's little things like this in this show that really warms my heart. And trust me, there are some episodes where some emotional breakthroughs happen and you have to be cold not to be affected by them. I could talk more, but in case you're like Subaru and hate spoilers, I'll just say you can watch this on Crunchyroll or Funimation and see this mysterious relationship unfold. And there you have 10 through 6 of my top anime of 2019. I will work as hard as I can to get you the rest of this list before the end of January. Yeah, even with a better editor, getting this done in a timely manner is just difficult. So until then, like this video, share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe. If you want to help support the channel even more and get the chance to see videos early, then consider donating to the Patreon like these fine patrons did. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay animated.